What year is it? You already know the answer. 2026. You've written it on forms, you've typed it into your phone, you said it out loud without thinking twice. But here's what nobody asks. Who decided that? Not the calendar, not the scientists, not the astronomers tracking the slow rotation of this planet around a dying star. Someone, somewhere, made a choice. And that choice, that one seemingly simple number, quietly shapes how every human being on Earth understands their entire existence. Because here's the thing, the world isn't 2026 years old, it's 4.5 billion. And the gap between those two numbers isn't just a historical footnote, it's a psychological wound that most of us carry without ever knowing it's there. Go back. Not 2,000 years, not 4 billion, just a few centuries. In the year 1654, an Irish archbishop named James Ussher sat down with the Bible and did something that would quietly echo through the centuries like a stone dropped into still water. He cross-referenced every genealogy, every generation, every name in the Old Testament. He counted backwards through kings and prophets and floods and beginnings. And he arrived at a date, October 23rd, 4004 BC, 6 in the evening. That was it. That was the moment God created the world. And for hundreds of years, this wasn't a fringe belief. This was printed inside the King James Bible itself, sitting in the margins as though it were as certain as the words beside it. Millions of people lived and died inside that timeline, and they felt fine. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because the question isn't really about Ussher. The question is about what happens to a human mind when the story it was given about reality turns out to be wrong. Not slightly wrong. Catastrophically, incomprehensibly wrong. In the 1700s, a Scottish geologist named James Hutton looked at rock layers in a cliff face and felt the floor drop out from under him. Not because the rocks were unusual, because they were ancient, impossibly, quietly ancient. Layers compressed over millions of years, not thousands. Processes so slow they made human history look like a single breath. He called it deep time. And the moment that phrase entered the world, something cracked. Because deep time doesn't just change the age of the Earth, it changes the age of you. It changes where you fit. It relocates you from the center of the story to a footnote, so small you need a microscope to find it. Think about this carefully. If the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years, then our entire civilization, agriculture, language, philosophy, religion, war, love, everything, fits inside the last 0.006% of Earth's history. Not even a blink, not even a heartbeat. We are so new here that the planet has no memory of us. But that's not the part that should unsettle you. The part that should unsettle you is this. We know all of that. The science is solid. The evidence is overwhelming. And yet the year we use, the number printed on your birth certificate, stamped on your passport, built into every legal and cultural system on the planet, is still anchored to a 2,000-year-old religious calendar that begins with the approximate birth of a single man in a specific corner of one small continent. We know the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and we still wake up every morning in the year 2026. Why? Here's the answer. Nobody gives you in school. Calendars aren't about time. They never were. They are about power, about identity, about which civilization gets to decide where the story begins. The Romans counted from the founding of Rome. The Hebrews count from a calculated creation. The Islamic calendar begins with the Prophet's migration. The Chinese calendar is over 4,000 years old. Japan still runs an imperial calendar alongside the international one. Every culture on Earth has looked at the same sky, the same stars, the same spinning rock, and started counting from a completely different moment. That means the year isn't a fact, it's a choice. And this is where everything changes. Because if the year is a choice, if 2026 is just one story among dozens that humans have told about when the world began, then what else is? Psychologists have a term for this. They call it the anchoring effect. The first number you hear about something becomes the invisible frame through which you judge everything that follows. Tell someone a car costs $40,000 before quoting 35, and 35 feels like a deal. Tell them 25 first, and 35 feels like a ripoff. Same car, same price. Different anchor. Now apply that to existence itself. We were anchored to a 6,000-year-old universe before we were old enough to question it. Some of us, literally. Others, culturally, structurally, through institutions that still run on calendars born from theology. And what deep time revealed, what Hutton and Darwin and later Carl Sagan spent their lives trying to communicate, is that the anchor is wrong. Not metaphorically, numerically, empirically, astronomically wrong by a factor of 700,000. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Even the people who fully accept the science, even the astronomers, the geologists, the evolutionary biologists, they still write 2026 on their forms. They still celebrate New Year's in January. They still feel the weight of a century turning, as though the universe itself is marking time alongside them. Because we can know the truth and still live inside the myth, and we do it every single day. This isn't really about calendars, it never was. It's about what happens when the story a civilization tells about itself no longer matches reality, and the civilization carries on anyway, not out of ignorance, out of need. Because here's what deep time actually does to the human mind when you sit with it long enough, honestly enough, without looking away. It makes you feel erased. 4.5 billion years before you, billions more after. A universe so indifferent to your presence that calling it vast doesn't even begin to reach it. The stars you see at night are light that left its source before your great-great-grandparents were born. Some of it left before the dinosaurs, some before the Earth itself. You are not even late to the party. You arrived after the party ended, found a note on the door, and convinced yourself the note was addressed to you. And so we built calendars. We drew lines around years and named them. We made the year 2000 feel significant. We made 2026 feel specific, present, real. We made human time feel like the only time that matters. Because if we didn't, we would have to sit inside 4.5 billion years of silence and ask ourselves what any of this is for. The calendar is not a measurement of the universe. It is a defense mechanism against it. And here is the last thing, the thing that stays with you. Every generation in human history has believed it was living at the center of time. The Romans believed civilization peaked with Rome. Medieval Europeans believed they were living in the final age before divine judgment. Every century has produced people absolutely convinced they were witnessing the most important moment in the history of the world. And every one of them was wrong, not because nothing mattered, but because the story was too small, the frame was too narrow. The calendar started too recently to hold what was actually happening. We are not living in 2026. We are living 4.5 billion years into something so enormous we don't have the language for it. We are made of atoms forged in dying stars. We carry evolutionary memory stretching back to single-celled organisms floating in a primordial ocean before the continents had settled. The anxiety you feel, the longing you carry, the strange existential weight of being alive, that is not new. That is ancient. That predates every calendar ever invented. You are not a person living in 2026. You are the universe briefly, improbably, looking at itself. The question was never what year it is. The question is whether you're brave enough to feel how long you've actually been here.